Hello everyone, hope you're having a good day, and welcome to today's book review. Today we'll be looking at Michael Pierce's Motes and Beams. Michael runs a YouTube channel, mostly focused on MBTI philosophy and other things. His book, Motes and Beams, it's a pretty in-depth look into MBTI and Jungian psychology, and I have to say I was very excited to see this come out, and it did not disappoint. With that being said, let's go in and take a look at it. Most people take a personality test sometime during high school. It's usually for some kind of career counseling alignment to match who you are with some type of job that you should do. Either that or you just want to know what Harry Potter character you are. After you finish taking it, it'll give you one of 16 personality types. And now you're done. Go ahead and read about what kind of person you are, feel really good about it, forget everything you learned about 2 days later, then think back on the whole experience about 2 years later being really weird. And that's it. You've successfully taken the Myers-Briggs personality test. Pick up, go home, nothing to see, you're good. Well, at least that's how it was before I bumped into Michael's channel anyway. After getting myself horribly confused about the way MBTI really works and rewatching my own personality type's video about 27 times, things only just began to start really coming together. But when they did, you really start to get a good grasp on how and why you think the way you do. When you dive a little deeper into other personality types, you begin to understand new perspectives from your own and tap into an ability to understand things that were outside of your own worldview. You get an understanding of the paths that other people think through and build their perspectives from. So now this brings us to the book itself. Essentially what it does is it goes into all the elements that make up one's personality, explains these elements each individually, and then shows the end result after everything's been put back together. It's kind of like a math class. The book begins with the fundamental basics, sets a foundation, and then builds upward in order to get a sense of clarity for why things are the way they are. And you're able to take on harder and more complex questions as you go further along. It kicks off by explaining how extroversion and introversion work, then the 4 functions, then what each function is like in both its extroverted and introverted forms, then the perception and judgment axes that are made up of these functions, and lastly, the 4 temperaments and the 16 personality types that exist as a result of how all the function axes have lined up. All of this can be a little bit complicated to wrap your arms around, but if you stick to it, everything ends up making quite a lot of sense once it falls into place. It's honestly not that bad, you just have to end up paying attention a little bit. If you just barely finished taking your test, I'm not sure I'd recommend it to you. But if you're interested in typology for some time and really want to know how and why things actually work, it's definitely what you're looking for. Michael has really stood out in this community, and he's taken an incredible amount of time to really make sure what he's saying is well thought through, and he usually gets real close to the right answers, if not hitting it every time. A lot of people who cover MBTI usually just go off of textbook definitions and stereotypes. That's not the case here. In addition to the literature, you can really tell he's gone in and done a great deal of observation on what the types are really like and how they work. It's like Dostoevsky's perspective on his writing, where he had actually lived through much of the hardships that he wrote about, whereas others tend to write about poverty from a perspective that they haven't actually lived. You can tell he was trying to understand these psychological phenomena, not just simply preach about them. So this book really came together and showed how all the different psychological structures are put together and how these operating systems in our heads work. I'd still recommend that you read this book and watch his videos together to really get a true understanding of your own personality type or whatever type you're really looking into. There was one chapter that I thought was a little bit weird, but other than that, the whole thing was just absolutely wonderful. It's one of those books that just goes and solves so many questions that you'd never even really thought of. It's absolutely a must-read if you're a student of human nature, and I know I'm going to have a lot of fun studying and putting a lot of these principles into action.